Now we're recording. All right. So welcome everyone. I'm Justin David here with Elaine Breyer. We're both classmates from 1986, performing arts and music and art. And we're here to talk about work and life and more work. And it's such a delight to be with you, Elaine. So
it's so good to see you, Justin. Yay.
This is the best thing, just catching up and schmoozing.
I know. It's public catching up.
Yeah. So tell us what you're doing in life. I'm actually going to give a little bit of an intro and say that when we're not in pandemic, Elaine sings at Don't Tell Mama Cafe, where you're a cabaret artist and has been doing this for 30 years or close to it, which is quite remarkable. And you can go online and see a number of Elaine's songs that she's performed live, and you can also see a recent clip of Elaine performing a song that's a takeoff on That's Amore, and I'll let you say what that's all about. And it's part of a fundraising. It was part of a fundraising. I don't know what you call it now. Zoomathon, I guess for artists who aren't able to work now, and it was hosted by Seth Rudetsky. And there were just a few people featured on the show, and you were one of them. So tell us about. Oh, and of course. I'll have to say this, Elaine is a mom of 3 daughters in West Orange, New Jersey, where you live. Tell us about your life, tell us about your work, and what it's like now in pandemic.
Okay, well, I have 3 daughters and no husband, so I call my house Casa Estrogen. And I've actually really, I have not hated being quarantined. I have to say, like, I've really enjoyed actually spending the time with them. We are not a family that's ready to kill each other. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we live in like a decent sized space. I think if we lived in a small apartment, then I might feel differently. But it's been actually kind of nice. I've liked resting. I'm like, oh, I'm not exhausted every minute of the day. This is lovely. But when I'm not in pandemic mode, I work at Don't Tell Mama. Don't Tell Mama, I work in the piano bar, because Don't Tell Mama has 2 spaces. There's cabaret rooms where people do like their one woman, one man shows, or other performances. And then there's the piano bar, which goes all night. And I waitress in the piano bar. I get up and do 2 to 3 sets a night where I'm singing, if somebody has a request, I'll get up there. I'm singing actually while I'm waitressing. Sometimes I have a cordless microphone in my armpit while I'm playing the tambourine and like serving a drink. And I also do cabaret. That's another, they're kind of different animals, piano bar, and then like the one-woman shows or the private gigs.
Yeah. Tell us more, shed some light on that for us. How are those different things?
Piano bar is very informal.
Yeah.
You're kind of, it's low stakes. Like, somebody will have a request and I may or may not know it. And I'll be like, well, I don't know it, but what? And I'll get up. I might pull my phone out. Be like, read the lyrics. It's also much more interactive because the audience changes every night. So like, even though there are numbers that I would say I was saying like almost every night, at least once, because they're the ones that people request. The people that are around you are looking at you differently. They're shouting things out at you. They might be, it's just they're from a different place, and so you're interacting with them in a different way, and it's different every night, which is nice. It's a good variety. Don't Tell Mama is interesting because it's right in the middle of the tourist, it's in Times Square. Yeah. So you get a lot of tourists there, a lot of people from all over the place, a lot of Europeans, a lot of Australians, and it's just, it's nice to interact with people from all over the world. And it's also great, like we have people that come to New York like once a year, and that club is on their list of things to do. So they'll come in every year and they'll be like, Elaine, we're back. That's right. And sometimes I remember that, and sometimes I don't.
You're back. So I've had that experience in reverse. Like, I do not go to Europe once a year. I'd love to go to Europe once a year. That'd be totally cool. I'd like to go to Europe again, when we get out of this fakakta pandemic. But I've had the reverse experience, like going to Paris. Like that's one of the first things I did out of college. I made some money and I blew it all on a trip to Paris. And I went to a chansonnerie, which are these old-timey, French folk song things that Jacques Brel came out of, and you hear
Mm.
Trace Yvette and Leonard Cohen, and it's like being in another world. Like all these people know the songs, it's its own culture. Or when I was a kid, I went with my grandparents to London and we went to a traditional music hall thing. I don't know if these things still exist, but there's something about local cabarets, dressed down, chaotic, slightly improvised, that is really its own precious cultural thing. And you're at the center, you are it.
I'm one of the people. There are
Yeah,
lots of people that have been doing it for a very long time. But
yeah,
it's nice. And it's almost, in many ways, it's like Rocky Horror Picture Show, because there are certain jokes that have been
yeah,
going around, like that you insert in different songs and people from the audience will scream them. And like,
yeah.
it's a really fun job. Like if you've got to have a job, it's a good one to have.
I want to talk about that, but I want to but you dropped a cultural reference, so I want to get to that. Rocky Horror Picture Show. When
Uh-huh.
was the first time you saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show live in a real theater with people doing the stuff, and where?
I was I was old.
Yeah,
I was not one of those people that like went in high school. I think I was like in my 20s or something
yeah,
like that when I first went. And I
yeah,
think it was not it died down a bit.
yeah.
Like it didn't have like the people that were so I mean I also saw the Batman movie
Uh-huh.
in a similar which that one seemed to have a lot more like for some reason people were more excited about screaming out the lines from the
Yeah,
Adam West Batman movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think I was in my early 20s when I finally got around to seeing Rocky
So,
Horror
so a
Picture.
couple of things about Rocky Horror. One is I wish I had been cool enough to see it at the 8th Street Playhouse. But here's the thing, I was too young. Who was I going to go with? Like my parents,
Right.
or as we say at LaGuardia, uh, my divorced parents, right? Which was kind of an interesting thing about LaGuardia, right? Right. I wasn't going to go with them. There was no like older sibling or cool aunt or uncle who was
Right.
going to take me. But when I got to LaGuardia, I met kids who somehow, I don't know how, got in to see it. Not only that, but they like dressed up and knew the lines. And it wasn't until I was about 16 or so that I saw it with a friend on Long Island. And it was so lame because in the middle of it, the projectionist, like people were doing all kinds of stuff, but it was mostly people who were just getting drunk and saying stupid stuff and not even the clever lines. And at one point, the projectionist had to come up and stop the viewing and say, okay, who shot bleach out of a water gun?
Oh
So,
my
yeah, yeah,
God.
yeah. So that was kind of lame. And
What a
then,
bunch of degenerates.
I know. And then
Long Island.
as my 50th birthday was approaching, for me, birthdays are generally low key, but I thought 50's coming, I got to do something fun. And I thought it could be fun to have sort of a screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show with lines. And then I went online and downloaded, like, you can find online, like, interactive scripts. It is so unbelievably filthy. I could
Yeah.
not ask my
Oh yeah.
friends and family to be a part of this. So,
My family would have been fine, just so you know.
and then
I could have brought my family. No
two,
problem.
2 years ago, I did make it back to Paris, and across Notre Dame, it should be restored soon in an hour a day. Notre Dame is an island between the right and the left banks of Paris, and there's a bridge. And right on, if you're at Notre Dame and you take the nearest bridge and you go to the left bank, tucked behind like the first street is a movie theater. Every Saturday night at midnight they play the Rocky Horror Picture Show right in the shadow of
Yeah.
Notre Dame. I didn't see it, but I want to. Anyway, we went on a tangent. Let's get back to you. This is part of the chaos. But let's get back to you. How did you just another observation about your fans? Watching your videos, people love you. And when you're singing these songs, those people are with you. They're hootering and hollering, and you prod them to. What's your great line for saying, put your arms in the air?
When I'm telling them to sway. Oh, like
Yeah,
during the deli song, you mean?
yeah, yeah.
If they don't sway, I'm like, what are you, anti-Semitic? Like, right.
They,
But that's a running gag. And the thing is, and then I'll sing like another song and make people sway. There's
yeah,
nothing to do with being Jewish. And I'll be like, what are you, get your arms up. What are you, anti-Semitic? Like, it's just like, I love a good running joke. I love a good running joke.
that's amazing. How did you get into this?
Um, Got into it. I guess, I went off to college and hated it and came back after a year. And I was auditioning for things and not having much success. And I wandered with a friend of mine, Leslie Reese, who went to school with us, who was like my best friend there in high school. She took me to the Duplex, which was in the Village, and it was a piano bar. And it was actually not even at night. It was like during brunch time or lunchtime, because there's no food. So it was lunch, it wasn't brunch. And there was a piano player playing there, and there was somebody waiting on tables who was singing, and you could get up from the audience and do a number. And I was immediately like, this is what I want to do. This is it. I want to be able to like make money and sing all the time. And that's how it happened. I found this place, I stumbled in, and that was it. Like, then I started hanging out in all of these different clubs, trying to get a job, because it was hard at the time, because everybody kind of wanted to work there, and you really had to kind of make yourself seen and kind of beg to finally like be given a chance. And I was given a chance at another piano bar called Rose's Turn, which was in the Village on Grove Street. I tried to get a job at the Duplex, couldn't do it. They wouldn't hire me. And the Grove Street, it was new. They had just opened the place, and the guy who was the manager liked me, and he's like, "Do you want to work here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll work here until I finally get a job at the Duplex." And then like I ended up staying there. It was like my favorite job ever. And I also ended up dating that manager for for 9 years. That's the guy in the song that we shall not mention. But but that's how it happened. And it was great for me. It was such a great experience, because like I also had a job simultaneously at a bookstore. I worked at the Barnes and Noble at 18th and 5th Street. And at the time, I worked in like every department in that bookstore. Like I worked on the floor, I worked in the college textbook office, I worked in the mail room, I worked in the special orders department. I worked everywhere. I worked in receiving. And when I was in receiving in the basement, I used to be down there like opening boxes of books, entering in the computer, and I'd have my radio blasting, and I would sing at the top of my lungs in the basement while I was receiving books. And people would stand, there was like a little staircase, a little small spiral staircase that like was at the top of where I was, and people would stand there and be like, who's singing down there? And my managers would come and be like, you can't sing so loud. You have to sing quieter. You have to sing quiet. People can hear. I'm like, oh. So it was great when I finally found an outlet where I could actually like sing that wasn't a bookstore and wasn't inappropriate. It's good.
Did you have your own kind of private practice routine at the time?
No. It's funny, when I started going to these, there basically were open mics, at these piano bars. Until you got a job, you were basically one of the open mic singers. And I would go in with my like songs, and I started out with like pretty like serious songs. Like I'm trying to remember even like what I would go in with, like what were the numbers that I was singing. I mean, they were pretty like stereotypical. Like I'm sure I went in there with like the Rose and and it was hard because I found that I would get up to sing and people wouldn't necessarily listen. It was hard to get the audience attention because they're all drinking. They're all basically there to see their friends. Like that's kind of the nature of that environment. It's hard to kind of to rope the audience into watching you. And it used to kill me and break my heart. Like when I'd get up to sing these, like Break It To Me Gently was one of the things I would sing, or How Am I Supposed to Live Without You? Remember that, Laura Branigan, the Michael Bolton song that then he like did it himself. And what I finally realized, I went up there with, I don't know if you remember this, but when I was in high school, I used to always sing the Munchkin Land song. Do you remember that? Like
I don't know.
I would used to do a Glinda impression, and I would always be like, come out where you are.
Totally.
And I went to the music library in Lincoln Center, and I photocopied the music, and I brought it in, and I sang it, and people were like, and like grabbed, and I realized it's like if the funnier, the more I do funny stuff, the more people listen.
Yeah.
And then it kind of flipped my repertoire. Like then all of a sudden I was like, okay, what can I do that's going to be funny and that people are going to listen to? So that was like one of the earlier things. Then I did a mashup of I would sing I Can't Give You Anything But Love, and then I would sing Pennies from Heaven, and then I would sing them both at the same time because they're basically the same song.
Oh my gosh.
So,
How would you do that?
huh?
I don't want to ask you to sing. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
I
how
don't
would you
care.
sing
Like
both?
I would like it's basically I can't give you rains and rains, but love pennies from baby heaven. That's the only cloud that contains plenty of pennies from baby heaven. It's like that. It's just like you know.
Oh my gosh. So my son, who is my son who's studying to be a classical musician, classical pianist, he just graduated from undergrad. He would call that a quodlibet, where you take two songs and you mash them up. Now we call them a mashup.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
that's
Exactly.
that's really remarkable that you figured that out. And so if you go online, you'll see this repertoire of these parodies. I want to talk about them in a second, but I'm very interested in. I'm not funny. I've never done comedy. I've never done shtick. But of course, I love comedy, and I'm fascinated by the technique of comedy and how comedy happens. So here you are. You discover your voice in comedy, which anyone who knows you would say, well, of course, right? So like, how did you get to that place? Like, how did you discover that Glenda the Good Witch was going to be your way in?
I honestly, I think it was such that for me, like throughout my school years, was like my little like my party trick. You
Huh,
know,
huh,
it was my and I think I moved around a lot. I think I did that a lot, like going from school to school to school. That was my thing. That would like kind of like endear me to people.
yeah.
And so I think that's all it was. It's like, how am I going to get these people to like me? And I was like, oh, this is something I've always used to get people to like me. And it's musical. So I think it's going to work. Um, the other great thing is once I started working in these places, I watched other people
Yeah.
and saw how they inserted comedy into music, like taking serious songs and just like putting a joke in here and putting a joke in here and totally like flipping it on its head. And so I learned a lot from the people that I worked with. I also, working in these clubs had a place to experiment with, and to try things out. It's like, you hear about like, Jerry Seinfeld who goes into like, these clubs to try his stuff out and see it. Like I had that, like 3 to 4 nights a week where I could be like, okay, let's see if this works. And all right, let's see. Or sometimes things just come up organically. You come up with them while you're performing. Like I've had numbers like that where I started out doing it straight, and now there's like so many jokes in there that I've inserted like over the years. It's like, oh, that's a keeper. Like, and it just grows like naturally because you're doing it over and over again in front of different people.
Yeah.
And it's very organic. I mean, there's absolutely also been times where I had to sit down and come up with something. Like, when I'm putting together a show, or I'm like, my material is so old and boring. What else can I do? And then I just like basically sit in front of a white screen for as long as I can stand it and try to come up with ideas.
What's it like being in that woodshed?
In the what?
In that woodshed. That's what musicians call it, going into the woodshed.
Is the woodshed, wait, which is the woodshed? Is the woodshed the piano bar where I'm trying things out, or is the woodshed staring at the white screen? Which is the woodshed?
I don't know. What do you think? To borrow a line from Analyze This.
I think they're both woodsheds.
Yeah.
The one where I'm performing in front of a bunch of people is an easier woodshed than staring at my white screen and banging my head against the desk and going, why can't I think of anything? The one where I'm performing and coming up with stuff on the fly and figuring it out is definitely more joyful. And for sure, I'm going to say that many of my best ideas have come from that environment.
Wow.
and sitting, being disciplined and sitting in front of, I'm like looking at my computer, like, kind of like scowling at it as I talk to you, sitting at a computer and coming up with stuff. It's rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you do it, and you always, that's the thing. It's like, I always sit there, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. But I make myself sit there, and then eventually I do it. Like,
do you do it? Do you do it when you have to, or do you have a kind of rhythm or routine?
It's mostly when I have to.
Yeah.
Whether I have to, like, the reason I have to can be many things. Could be I have a deadline.
Yeah.
It could be, I've got a project that I'm working on, or it could be just like, I hate myself because I haven't done anything new, and I don't want to hate myself anymore, so I have to sit here and do this.
Well, so here's a question. Why do you hate yourself for not coming up with something new?
Because it's so funny. When I worked in this bar in the Village, Rose's Turn, it was the customer base was predominantly regulars, like people that lived in the city and would come in. And so I would do all the same things. And people would say, my friend George Sanders always said, it's like church. People go in, they know what they're going to hear. They sing along. It's comforting. You pass the bowl around, but like sometimes it would feel old. Like I would have all the same people in the room singing the same things. It's like, I got to put something out there that's new. And I have to, and it started to feel not so creative. I feel like it's not so much the case where I work now because it's all tourists and it always feels new. Because there's people in the audience that haven't heard everything. Like when I was in the Village and it's the same room all the time and people had heard the jokes, like the laughs like weren't even there as much because people are like, because they know it's coming. Whereas it's always different at Don't Tell Mama because the audience is always predominantly like, people that haven't heard the stuff before.
Wow.
Not always. Sometimes it's like 50-50 regulars, tourists, but.
I want to go back to Jerry Seinfeld for a second, because even though his series Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee can be really uneven, but when I watch it occasionally because I want to see how he kind of gets inside comedy. And what's fascinating, there's a lot that's fascinating to me in hearing you talk about your craft, but for him, he speaks of those 3 minutes when you try out new material in a club as the most terrifying 3 minutes of his life. And then what he loves is going into his cocoon. I think I read somewhere that he keeps an apartment on the Upper West Side where he goes in with a yellow legal pad and just writes stuff all the time, right? That he loves. And then going out in front of the people he finds absolutely terrifying. But for you, it's you said it's the reverse.
But this is the thing. This is the difference between me and Jerry Seinfeld. It's like the place that I go and try things out is my second living room. Like that's my home. So I don't even care. Like I can bomb there in front of a room full of people. And I'm like, if I'm in a different space where I'm not so comfortable, or like if I'm doing a private gig or a party, I am nervous. My stomach hurts. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Why do I do this? Why did I pick a job where I literally feel like I'm going to throw up? But that space is like my living room. So it's very easy to me to just be like, hey, I have this. Let's see if this works. It's interesting. Like it's a luxury that most people don't have. So I'm lucky in that way.
Oh, do you feel the same way about the one-woman shows? You said those are more high stakes. Do you feel nervous?
No, those are nervous. Like, what the hell am I doing? Oh my God, I'm going to suck. Yeah. That's different. I did a show at the Cutting Room like 4 years ago, which was the first show I'd written since my daughter had been born, my first daughter, because I'd just been like momming and honestly, I had nothing to say. Like that was the thing. I often feel like that. Like I won't put out, there's some people that are very prolific and they put together a new show and they're doing these shows like every 6 months. They've got a new show that they're doing. And like, I'm like, if I don't have anything to say, I don't do it. And this was a long time. It was like 15 years of like, no, I don't know. And then finally I was like, yeah, I got something to say. And I put it all in this show. And it was like, it was very raw. And it was like, I think it was like sad and funny at the same time. And like that's my thing, is like I can be like very like poignant and then like turn it on a dime and like and make it funny. And that's what life kind of is, really, when you think about it. It's like some like it's slogging through some really 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 difficult situation, and then just like looking back and being like it's like, oh, okay. We'll go in this direction. All right, here we go.
Wow. So all that came into the show?
Yeah, there was a lot in the show. For instance, I'll give you an example. I did a bit about like being a mom,
Yeah.
and I talked about how I have these 3 kids, and how my last kid was a pregnancy that I was not expecting, and it was right at the end of my marriage, and how I really was so upset about being pregnant, and how I did not want that baby, and I didn't know what to do, and and I had her, and now she is like the biggest blessing in my life. And I said that, in the show. I said, she's the only one that likes me, but I said how she was a metaphor for life, because what looked like was my biggest like tragedy or like problem ended up being like a huge blessing in my life. So that's like what I said. It's like sometimes what looks like your worst nightmare is actually like your best blessing. And then I turned it around and said, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's actually your worst nightmare. But sometimes, it's your biggest blessing. So it's like, it's just something that's like, so that is like a way of, it's an example of like taking, something that's so poignant and then making a joke out of it. But also like it's like a metaphor for life. Like you just, it's like one thing, it's one minute it's tragedy, the next minute it's comedy.
Yeah. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking how hard it is as a human to do what you just described. That I know from my own experience, right? When there's something really difficult, when it's happening, especially when it's happening, I can only see it in one dimension. And it takes so much work to be able to see other sides of it, to be open to other things that can happen, and to get some distance from it. It's really, really hard. And then life happens, and that difficult event or that difficult dynamic, even if it's an ongoing reality, gets kind of tucked away and go on with life, right? And that's what I guess people call resilience. But you are doing something very different, in that it's like you're juggling the both and you're keeping it alive for yourself, and then you're keeping it alive for other people. And
Oh yeah, I guess
yeah,
so.
and
I like that, Justin.
well, no, it's just kind of what I'm feeling right now, hearing you talking about it. So if I were going to your show, having heard the story you just told me, I'd feel moved. I'd feel, here's someone who really came to this great insight. Here's someone with this great joy. Um, and I would probably experience the range of emotions, right? Hearing you do that. I would laugh, I would cry, I'd reflect, I'd go into another place, and I'd come back. And it seems to me that what you do is something that most people don't do, most people aren't willing to do, and most people can't do. So I'm wondering, you know what I'm saying? Like if,
Yeah.
and we're complex beings, but few of us put our complexity, right? Few of us hold all that rawness at once and then share it with people the way you do.
Right, but few people also have to like sit in front of a screen and come up with things to present to people like that. You know what I mean? Like in that kind of a forum. If that's what you were doing, your job was to get up in front of people and to explain your situation in life and to explain your revelations in a way that is relatable,
Yeah.
and entertaining and also meaningful, then you would. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what performing is, I think.
Yeah.
So that's my job. So I figure it out.
Yeah.
And if it was your job, you would figure it out too. I promise you would.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it kind of is in a weird way as a rabbi.
I'm sure. There's no doubt in my mind, Justin, that you do exactly that, and you just don't realize it.
It's hard. It's hard work. But you choose this job again and again. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Why?
I love it. Oh, it
Yeah.
makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky. I'm so
Yeah.
lucky that there are very few people that, can say that they do what they love, every day. And it's a joy. And I feel very fortunate to
Yeah.
have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like it's not a joy every night. Like some nights it's like, drunk people and cleaning up broken glasses and
Yeah.
nobody's listening to me. Like sometimes I think about if there's a night where everybody's just drunk and I'm looking out on the audience, nobody's paying attention to me, and I feel like I want to sing Help by the Beatles, because they always told those stories about where girls were screaming so loud that
Yeah.
nobody even knew they were singing, so they could just mouth the words.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that sometimes, what if I just stood up here and mouthed the words? Would anybody even know?
Sounds like you're dealing with a class of unruly 7th graders.
It is. I always say that my job is it's like being a camp counselor for adult tourists. That's what my job is. And yeah, sometimes the audience is right there with you, and it is the greatest feeling in the world. And every time I'm having one of those great nights, I really take note of it. I'm like, this feels so good, and I realize it, and I'm in the moment, and I'm appreciative. But there are absolutely moments where it's oh, these people, I don't know if it's them, I don't know if it's me, but it's not working. And again, though, because it's my living room, I don't care. It's oh well, 75% of the time I am rocking this place. If you guys aren't into me, it's fine. I'll just deal.
I want to ask you your most memorable heckler story, and I've kind of a funny story about that. But I wonder, how much of the key to being yourself as an artist or being yourself as a person has to do with cultivating the art of not giving a shit.
That is, you have to, you kind of have to, even if you do give a shit, you have to be able to push through it and go do it anyway. I don't even know if it's not giving a shit is the right, it's a matter of all right, I care, but I'm gonna do it anyway. That's the not giving a shit part is the okay, it's scary and I may be horrible, but I'm gonna do this anyway. It's that.
Wow.
I mean, like you said, the not giving a shit as far as the audience goes, I can only do in that one space where I feel completely comfortable. I cannot achieve that anywhere else.
Yeah.
I can't achieve that in other aspects of my life. During a PTA meeting, I can't always achieve that. You know what I mean?
Oh, and I'm sure there are moments you want to.
I don't know. But the thing, about performing is you have to be able to have those feelings, be there and let them be there and push through and do it anyway.
Wow.
And if you bomb, so I'm not saying if I bomb, I don't give a shit. I'm just saying that I have to give myself the luxury of bombing and then feeling bad about it. It's okay.
Wow.
But my best heckler story is I sing, this, I sing a parody of You Light Up My Life called You Fucked Up My Life. And it's my most popular song.
Yeah.
People always request it. I have to wait until the theater's let out before I sing it on nights that I work, because otherwise people will come in and it'll be like, did you sing it yet? Did you sing it yet? So I have to wait till the room fills up and then sing it. And then people still come in and are like, did you sing it yet? I'm like, I sang it. And they're like, oh. But one night I was singing it and there was this guy behind me, because the room is there's a back room behind the stage where there's a monitor and people, can kind of see your ass, but also watch the screen. And I'm singing this song singing You Fucked Up My Life, you know, so many nights I sit by my telephone, and I'm singing it, and the guy behind me is like drunk and loudly singing like the real words while I'm like singing this parody. And like I'm like kind of letting it go, you know, I'm like, I'm going on. And finally, like he's so loud and so obnoxious, I turn around to him and I'm like, sir, I want you to know that I know there are other lyrics to the song. Meanwhile, the whole room is like packed. Like they're all like, and I stopped the show to be like, I know, as a matter of fact, like I rewrote them. Like I know what the words are. And I'm singing this. I said, but for $100, I will sing the original words to this song for you. Do you have $100? And like he starts like digging through. And I never in a million years did I think this guy was gonna like, you know, and he's like looking through it and he's like, how about 20? I'm like, nope, $100. And like, you know, and then I turn around, like I'm gonna resume, and the guy comes up to me and he hands me $100. And now I've got a room full of people who, many of whom, I'm gonna say 50% of them have heard me sing this song before and have never heard me sing the original lyrics and don't even know if I can do it. And I belt out the original song. Even my staff was like, because they've never seen me sing it either. And then I get to the very end of the song, like, you know, the it can't be wrong when it feels so right. And some guy from the bar gets up and gives me another $100 and says, I want you to sing your lyrics to this song. And like, and the bar goes crazy. And like, so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna finish. And then I did. I finished the original, and then I went back and sang it. And it was like, it was so funny. It was so funny, and it was a really great moment. It was a great moment, like for like the audience members who knew like what was supposed to happen, and it didn't happen. For my staff who'd like see me sing that song literally like 10,000 times, and all of a sudden it was like, that was my favorite heckler story.
Oh my goodness, that is just brilliant. That's just brilliant.
And it was lucrative.
Yeah, I was gonna say, right? That's $200 in your kid's college account or whatever. Right? They can use that to buy more pizza.
Right.
So let's talk about some of your songs. American Pie, right? I was expecting a parody of American Pie, but instead it's an annotation of American Pie to American Pie with all the cadences of American Pie for as long as American Pie is.
Yes.
That is just friggin' brilliant. Tell us about that. I actually have a memory of you in high school singing American Pie.
Yeah, that was like one of my favorite songs as a kid. I was very proud, like, to know all the lyrics. Like, I think that's kind of like a feat. And I always wanted to know what it meant, because the lyrics are so cryptic and so, you know, and you hear, I've heard rumors over the years of like what things. So, I mean, and he's never actually given like a full explanation of what everything. So everything is sort of speculative. But like I did some research and like looked at other people's theories and looked at like historically what was going on and like came up with like my interpretation of what these things meant, based on other people's, you know, interpretations and what was going on. And I had cue cards, which was something I'd used in another number. So I was kind of known for using cue cards, where I just like, you know, or they weren't even cue cards of this because you weren't singing along. The other one was cue cards. These were more like, you know, visual aids.
Yeah.
With illustrations and things that I, you know, printed out just to kind of explain what American Pie meant verse by verse, like the different, like, you know, what, you know, who the king was, who the jester was, you know. And while Lenin read a book on Marx, how that's John Lennon, you know, talking about communism. And the hardest part of that song was trying to mimic the rhyme scheme in the chorus, because there's so many internal rhymes, right? Like, bye, Miss American Pie, drove my Chevy till Levee was dry. And good old, maybe it's not even the chorus, maybe it's actually the verse that's got there's a lot of places where there's like internal rhymes that I wanted to match. So that was the hardest part of that. Also memorizing the words to to a whole nother American. It's hard enough to remember the words to the original American Pie, and then to be like, okay, now I've got to remember the words to another 8 minutes.
Oh yeah. It's so brilliant because the other reference to the other American Pie reference is the Weird Al Yankovic version. Everyone
Which was
listens
the Star Wars one.
right, right. But that's very different. That just takes the subject matter of Star Wars and grafts it onto American Pie or vice versa. Yours is really it's like a live deconstruction of American Pie as you're singing American Pie. It's
Yeah.
so clever, so interesting. But it's funny. I was thinking about it. There are two verses in American Pie. I know every word of that song, and I've come to not regard it with the same kind of reverence over the years. But there are two lines in it that don't make sense to me. One is, took my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. A levee's supposed to be dry, right? It keeps the it keeps the waters back. If the levee is wet, you've got New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Like you want the levee to be dry. That's the whole point of a levee.
Isn't like a levee like also like a word like somehow has like a bar kind of reference? Like,
oh really?
I think so. I can't Google it because I'm on the phone. I'm on my phone too. But
all right, we'll have to check that out. The other thing is moss grows fat on a rolling stone, right? But that makes no sense because the whole point of a rolling stone is that it gathers no moss.
Right, but I think that is obviously like the thing, like they're talking about the Rolling Stones as opposed to, so it's kind of like this is not the same.
So you think he's trying to be ironic there?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
It's like Moss normally doesn't.
Yeah. My whole thing about that song is that it's a song that's supposed to be about the death of innocence, but the innocence was never there in the first place, number one.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Number two, yes, it was a horrible tragedy that Richie Valens, who was like 17 or 18 at the time, Buddy Holly, who was in his early 20s, and the Big Bopper died in this plane crash because their record company didn't give a shit about their safety or the publicists. That itself exposes kind of the corruption of the whole industry. But and those were horrible tragedies, but popular music after that, American rock and roll and blues and soul and funk, just flourished, right? So I don't quite buy the premise of the song that after those giants died, that sort of Americana kind of fizzled. I would say it grew in completely dynamic new directions.
Well, I mean, if you look at the example that's like at the end of the song with the Rolling Stones and the Hells Angels and all that, like it kind of, I mean, that's probably, that's kind of what he was. I think he was, and also just like the drug culture. I think that like was more prevalent in the 60s, and I'm assuming that that's kind of what he's referring to.
Yeah.
Whereas even you know what it is.
Yeah.
In the 50s, there was more of a semblance or of innocence, and like all that stuff was kind of like the sex and the drugs were more like it wasn't out in the open as much. So maybe that's what maybe he was looking for more. Maybe less transparency is what he was missing.
Yeah.
Right.
He also wrote it in 1973 or 72 or whenever that came out. So different era. We could spend a whole other 45 minutes on American Pie and critiquing American Pie, but the Deli song. Talk about the Deli song, and one thing I'm interested in, kind of a bigger level on that, is how it ties into this whole tradition of Jewish Belsport humor. Wait, what's the word I'm looking for? Borscht Belt.
Borscht Belt, yes.
Humor, and yesterday apparently was the birthday of Melvin James Kaminsky, otherwise known as Mel Brooks. So we want to wish a mazel tov to Mel.
Happy birthday, Mel! Well, yeah. Yeah, I did not write the Deli song.
Oh.
That was a song that somebody else, like a group of people who worked in the piano bars way before I did, had written. And I heard another man come in and sing it one night. Like this older, there wasn't even like a real performer. It's like an open mic person got up and sang it, and I was like, that song is hilarious. I was like, where did you get that song? And what was I singing? I was singing like some other song, and we traded lyrics.
Yeah.
Which I thought was hilarious because my lyrics were readily available. Like, you know, like to do with like I literally think the song that I was singing that he wanted to sing was Running Bear. Which, by the way, now I can't sing anymore because it's not appropriate anymore. Do you remember Running Bear? Running
No.
Bear was like, it's a song from the 50s about like two Native Americans who like are from different tribes, and they live like across the water from each other, and they can't be together because they're from different tribes. It's like a Romeo and Juliet. But I used to do it with like, you know, I'd wear a headdress and beat my tom-tom, and like now you can't do that anymore. It's like, all right. But he wanted the lyrics to that song, so I was able to like give him the sheet music for that, and then he gave me the lyrics to this, and then I've just done it ever since. And like I don't think anyone has done it as many times as me. But it was good for me because that was always part of like my persona when I'm on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I make a lot of jokes about being Jewish. I make a lot of jokes about my mother, like, you know, just like you're stereotypical, like some dirty, some not, like, yeah.
Well, it's part of a tradition. It's part of a comedic tradition that,
yes.
you know, you're bringing forward in a new way.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, that song is always, that's another one. Like that one and the fuck song are my two most popular numbers.
Excuse me?
Sure. The fuck song, you know, you fucked up my life.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We affectionately call it the fuck song.
You're making me blush. But they're great. It's fun. It's interesting. You said someone else wrote it, but to see you perform it, you own it. Like that is your song.
Yeah, I've been doing it for like 30 years. So yeah, I'm very grateful. Yeah, I'm very grateful to them for writing it because
wow,
it's been good for me. Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful.
I always tell a Jewish joke in the middle of it too, which isn't necessarily a Jewish joke.
What's the joke?
A lot of them, I've got numerous ones. I change them up every single time.
Yeah. Ever look at the Big Book of Jewish Humor? You know that?
Huh?
Ever look at the Big Book of Jewish Humor?
No.
Oh.
I didn't know it existed. I'm gonna go order it on Amazon the minute
I poured over. It's this big book that came out in the 70s. It's still really good. It has all kinds of short stories, essays, random jokes, Talmudic quotations. I mean, it's fantastic. I poured over that book as a teenager. I studied that book as if I was like, as if it were my key to medical school or something.
I'm gonna go get it. No, one of my favorite ones is a rabbi joke. You want to hear my rabbi joke?
Oh God, yes, please.
So this man goes to talk to his rabbi, and he says, "Rabbi, I have this terrible problem. Everything I eat tastes like poison. I think my wife is trying to kill me." And the rabbi is like, "Morty, your wife is a lovely woman. You're crazy. Go home to your wife." And he comes back the next day, and he's like, "Rabbi, I'm telling you, everything I eat tastes like poison. My wife is trying to kill me." And the rabbi's like, "Morty, you're paranoid. Go home to your wife." So he goes home. He comes back the next day. He's like, "Rabbi," and the rabbi's like, "Morty, send your wife to me. I want to talk to your wife." So he sends the wife to talk to the rabbi, and he goes in the next day, and the rabbi says, "Morty, I talked to your wife yesterday for 5.5 hours. Take the poison."
Oh my goodness, that's brilliant.
You can have it, Justin.
No, I can't. There is no one I can tell that joke safely to and still keep my position as the rabbi of Congregation B'nai Israel in Northampton, Massachusetts. That is just brilliant. That is just brilliant. You know, we haven't talked about, you know, this whole thing is going to be shown, you know, shared on the LaGuardia alum Facebook page, a couple of pages that are out there. We haven't talked about LaGuardia and music and art. Favorite teachers?
I loved Ms. Masson. Remember Ms. Masson? She taught like my drama English class. That was the only drama class I could take because if you weren't a drama major, you couldn't take any drama. So I loved that. Huh. I loved Ms. Pollard. Like all my English teachers, with the exception of Dr. Reich, I really loved. I also loved Dr. Aronson. you ever have him? Did you have Dr. Aronson for math? He taught, was it calculus or pre-calculus?
Oh, yes, I did. I thought it was Abramson, but Aronson from, yeah.
You're right. No, you're right. I think you're right. I think maybe it is Abramson.
Yeah, I did have
Maybe
him,
it's
yeah.
Abramson. You're right. It's Mr. Abramson.
He's an excellent teacher.
I loved him.
What did you love about him? I loved him too, but he was a very straight character as a math teacher. What did you love about him?
I thought he was so smart and so interesting. And this is hilarious. Like, I begged him to let me take, I think was it pre-calculus or calculus? Which one was it?
Yeah.
It was an honors class, and I didn't qualify, and I begged him to let me take that class. I was like, please let me take this class. I really want to be in this class. And he was like, okay. And he let me in, and I failed it. And not even because like I couldn't, like I didn't try. I don't think I even went to class. Like I was like, but I loved that he let me beg myself. He was like, he had faith in me, even though it was not justified. I loved that he had faith in me.
And you remember him fondly, even though you failed the class.
I loved him. I thought he was great.
Wow. There's deep wisdom in that. You bring forth this deep wisdom.
I also had a math teacher that I had a huge crush on in ninth grade, whose name was Mr. Kaplan. And I just loved him. He didn't do a lot of teaching. He told a lot of stories, and his stories were hilarious.
Wow.
And he was like, he was kind of like, what's the name of the comedian who like is really deadpan and talks
Stephen
like,
Wright.
Yeah. He was kind of reminded me a little of Stephen Wright.
Wow.
And like the way he would talk, just kind of like, but he was great too. I like all the teachers that didn't really teach me anything. Those were my favorite teachers.
You learned a lot from them, obviously.
So stupid. Did you take French?
I did.
Did you have Madame Poisson?
No.
She was hilarious too.
Yeah.
She was she never spoke in English. She just spoke in French the whole time. It was really hard to know what the hell she was talking about. We had one student I was Christine Langeroux. Do you remember Christine Langeroux? She like knew what she was talking about, and she would like, you would see Christine Langeroux like chuckle under her because we knew that this woman was like making fun of us like the whole time she was talking in French. Like, and Christine was like, you wouldn't believe the things she was saying.
That's very funny. That's like, it reminds me of are you into David Sedaris?
I liked David Sedaris. I haven't read a lot, but yeah.
Me Talk Pretty One Day has a whole thing about him living in France and going to French classes in Paris. And there's a teacher who clearly despises him and tortures him, and it's great. It's awesome. Get it and read it. You'll love it.
All right, I'm adding it to the list. That and the Jewish Book of Humor.
Yeah, those are both great. Well, Elaine, we should probably stop. We want to give, I want to let you get on with your day. You have 3 daughters who have lives, and you're an artist trying to figure out how to be funny and bring your great humor and insight to the world.
Not right now. Right now, I'm just for the last 3 months, I've just been like a lump, but I've liked it. It's been good. I've enjoyed it.
That's great. But thank you for being part of this. I hope, I know that our classmates will be delighted, inspired by your journey and your work and your insight. And when all this is over, we should have a music and art performing arts night at Don't Tell Mama, and we will we will raise the roof on that place. It'll be.
I would love that. This has been so nice, Justin. It's so good to see you and to talk to you.
Great to see you. I miss you. I miss you.
I miss you too. Come back to New York.
We'll do. We'll do.